You can manifest, dream, hope, pray, desire anything you want in life. But if it's staring you in the face and you don't take an action on it, nothing's going to happen.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
And we're back with another episode of Podcast on Podcasting. And, well, hello. I need to interrupt episode 115 to shout out one of our listeners. And his or her name is Taco69Z. Boom. You just got added to the drawing. So Taco, you're in the drawing already. Taco. I think Taco took after Adam Adams. Is that right? Let me know when you email us. Email us at team@growyourshow.com. That'll go to the management staff at my team, and we'll make sure that you're added. We've got this really nifty computerized like Wheel of Fortune, and we put all of the tickets in for you. And what we did for Matt as well for a couple of episodes back, and I'm going to read like a couple other people's reviews over the next couple of episodes as well. But this computer program is pretty neat. Like we put all of the amount of tickets that you have, we literally just push a button and it automates everything for us. So we don't have to like put it in on paper, and we can record the whole thing and everybody knows that we're being legit. So it's kind of rad. But Taco, I want to read your review. For those of you who don't know what's going on, you're like, why did you interrupt this to read a review? We're actually we're gifting our services in exchange for just connecting with you, your support with the show. And we're giving out some of these because we think that it's mutually beneficial. We want to add value to a couple of people who like want our services, but might not want to pay our prices. We are not cheap. I mean, we're really affordable when it comes to just edit only. Well, I think we're like the most affordable for all of the stuff that we do, like marketing the podcast and all that. But our like launch services and our marketing services, they're a high dollar amount for most people. And so this is just an awesome way for you to get involved. So this is episode 115. We are reading Taco's review. He says, Adam, he or she, because actually tacos are gender neutral, aren't they? Adam rules! ! Been working on a podcast with my close friends for a few years now. The Horror Junkies podcast. Guys and gals, go check out the Horror Junkies podcast so Taco can get some love as well. Been working on a podcast with my close friends for a few years now, the Horror Junkies podcast. It's always been a good time, but it is easy to get burnt out from time to time. Since finding your podcast, you've inspired me to grow our show as much as possible. You have made podcasting fun again, and I have set a bunch of goals that I'm excited to work toward. Keep doing what you do. Pop. And if anybody doesn't know what pop means, that's podcast on podcasting. We call ourselves the Pop. So, hey, Taco69Z, gracias. We are excited. We're adding you right now 1 ticket. And if you respond, I think you are going to respond, but when you respond, we'll add 3 more. So you have a total of 4 tickets. And actually, as of now, it's only you, Taco, it's Matt, and then there's going to be Jesse and Danetta who are going to be added as well over the next 2 days. So really stoked. Make sure you do that. And let's jump right back into the episode. Let's get you some value today. What's kind of cool is Lynda, who's with us today, she actually launched her podcast only about a week before we're recording this. So what I think you're going to get from this is real life in the trenches. I haven't been doing this for 10 years and I know every single thing, or I've forgotten what it really took. She's in it, so she knows exactly what's going on. So that's where we're going to come from today. What's really neat about Lynda is a couple years, about maybe 2-3 years ago, she started this brand called Women Action Takers. And she's got all of these different avenues, helping people publish books. She's got networking events for it. She's got additionally a few other things. Plus, she just launched her podcast, Women Action Takers, TM, because she's trademarking that bad woman, that bad girl. I don't know how to say it.
Bad girl. Bad girl.
Yeah, because that just sounds terrible. We're going to have to make it explicit when we say bad girl. That makes me think of other things for sure.
Don't go to badgirl.com because you don't know what you're going to find.
Yes, I'm sure. So let's ignore that and pretend like the listener had no idea what we were talking about and move on as fast and furious as possible. Lynda Sunshine West from Women Action Takers podcast. How you doing today?
Oh my God, I'm doing great. It's 7:15 in the morning. That's what can I do to start my day? Your podcast interview. Yes.
I can't do that. Not at 7:15. I'm on the other side of the world, so it isn't too early for me. It's 8:15.
Oh, there you go.
Are you in California or what part?
I am. Yeah, I'm in San Diego, California. Born and raised, one of the fews.
Oh, wow. I love San Diego. My cousin actually is from San Diego. She was there for years and years and years, but she just bought have you heard of those Sprinter vans?
Yes.
Okay. So she got her doctorate and she was living in a condominium, a nice condominium out there in San Diego, but she just sold her other car and she bought a Sprinter van and she decked it out so she can travel the whole country. So that's what she's doing. But she's from San Diego, and that's all I know about San Diego, except for the weather is amazing. I've been there, and I know that for sure. It's like 80 degrees, 70 degrees. It doesn't matter. Like if it's winter, if it's the hottest part of the summer, you are feeling good. So besides the weather and San Diego specific, so like 2.5 years ago or so, you started a brand, Women Action Takers. Before we get into the podcast and everything like that, I'm really curious what compelled you to having this brand. What does it stand for? What does it mean to you? Why are you putting so much fuel behind this fire?
Yeah, I love that question because it was in 2015 that I started my entrepreneurial journey. And when I came out of the gate, I had worked in corporate for 36 years. I had 49 jobs in 36 years. And by the way, I was never fired from one. I just kept leaving jobs. I got bored, easily bored, like one of those entrepreneurs, like you got to be an entrepreneur and not working or pinned down by somebody. So anyway, I started my entrepreneurial journey. And when I came out of the gate, I was like a tiger that was released. And I just like wanted to go eat up everything. And I did this, I did that. I started events. I lost a lot of money. I attended a lot of different trainings, seminars, webinars, 3-day events, 10-day events. I just kept on. I was hungry. Like, Les Brown, you got to be hungry, right? So I was really hungry to learn what there is out there for me and how am I going to make money? I had no idea. I was one of those who jumped without a net. And I didn't know how I was going to make money, but I knew that I needed to do something. And during the journey, I ended up meeting a mentor. His name is Reid, and he works with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And I really got myself inserted into this group of people who are these extremely fascinating, well-versed, and financially successful entrepreneurs, like multimillionaires and billionaires. And I was hobnobbing with these people that I didn't even know really in life existed, because I didn't know anybody like that before. And as I was going through this journey and discovering all these new things about myself, who I am, what my purpose is, why I'm on this planet, all these different things, it hit me that if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. And I know it sounds like a simple thing, but I never really put the 2 and 2 together. Like people talk about, I wish I had this, or I hope for this, or I'm going to pray on this, I'm going to manifest. But the reality is you can manifest, dream, hope, pray, desire anything you want in life. But if it's staring you in the face and you don't take an action on it, nothing's going to happen. And I was like, Women Action Takers. And that's where it came. So it was about 4 years into the journey or so, 3.5 years, that I said, I'm going to create Women Action Takers because I want to be surrounded by action takers. And if I create it, then they'll come, right? Build it and they'll come. And so I made that decision, and I'm so glad I did, because if nothing else, it helped me to create more action myself.
That is a freaking beautiful story. I love each and every part of that. And that part where you talked about you can manifest, dream, desire, anything in life, but if you don't take action, if you don't do what you need to do to make it happen, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. That makes me actually, it draws it back to just podcasting. In my opinion, there's a couple of things. Like, number one, you can hope to have a podcast, but if you don't actually take the action to have one, you won't. And additionally, you can hope to have listeners, but if you don't take action to promote the podcast, you're probably not going to be in front of anybody. They always say, if you build it, they will automatically come, right? I don't know if they automatically come. You got to kind of grab that bull by the horns and take matters into your own hands. So that's a powerful statement. And you said something like you went to a lot of different conferences, 3-day conferences, and then you just kind of glossed over something. 10-day conferences. What conference is 10 days? Is this like, what is it? What's that guy's name? Tony Robbins? Is that one of his things or somebody else?
It wasn't one of his. It's called CEO Space.
Okay.
And this was actually an interesting one for me because this was in 2015. One thing I didn't say is that in 2015, I decided to do something a little bit crazy. And I faced a fear every single day that year because I had so many fears that were stopping me from living my life. And I said, every day I'm going to face a fear. So what I would do is when I woke up, I would lay in bed and I would say to myself, what scares me? And I would just lay there and wait until the first thing popped into my head. And that was the fear I would face that day. And the reason I mention that is because in 2015, I decided to attend this event called CEO Space. And I think it was $7,500. Now that's a lot of money to pay for an event, but I felt like I needed to be there for some reason. Then I showed up on like Thursday or Friday, and I stayed in my hotel room until Monday morning. I wouldn't step down. I was so scared. I had imposter syndrome. It was eating me up. Like, why am I here? I don't belong here. I'm not a real CEO. I just named myself as CEO. I had no staff, no nothing. I didn't even have a business really. And like, what am I doing here? I ate ice cream. I had room service. I watched TV the whole time. I didn't even shower for 3 days. This is how much of like a depression I was in that moment. So Monday morning when I woke up, it was about 8:00 and I said, take a shower, put on your big girl panties and get down there and walk in there like you own the place, like you belong. And that's what I did. So Monday morning, when I finally showed up to the conference, it was a 10-day conference. I already missed 3 days of it. I showed up down there and you know what? It was in that first 4 hours that my whole concept of myself and who I am and my purpose and my value changed. So that's $7,500, even though it was a lot of money. I got that money worth in that first 4 hours because I felt like I belonged there. Those people were so welcoming, inviting, and helping me to see that there are people out there who really want to help and they really want to see me succeed. And so that's what that was all about.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the points that you made, so every single day you're there to face a fear. And I think if especially children and like, what do they call them? Like those tweenies and the young adults, if they spent more time like getting out of their comfort zone, doing something scary, I think that the whole world would grow a lot faster. My sweetheart, she's an attorney and she's always practiced being careful and cautious and calculated on every single thing. And I think it was just last year, she was like, I need to try to do something like that. Just like what you said, face a different fear every single day. So she was like asking people for free things at a restaurant. She said, oh, can I just have a free steak or something like that? It might not be like scary to you, but for her, she was like, I got to do this. And she even randomly enough did a fitness model thing, like a fitness model. She just went totally out of her comfort zone. And I think that's so impactful that you mentioned that. And for me, even though I'm not, quote, a listener of the podcast today, I'm interviewing you. I'm learning so much and like recommitting myself to find a way to kind of push past those boundaries. And you've done that in a big way with all the different pieces of your business. Like here it is, years and years ago, 2015 it was, you go to all these conferences, including a 10-day conference, don't shower for 3 days, eat room service, and never leave the room reclusively. And then you head out and you challenge yourself that makes the $7,500 worth it, even in 4 hours, and you keep doing that. What was the first business that you started that kind of was outside your comfort zone?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. This was a stinker because I lost a lot of money. My first thing is, well, first of all, when I came out of the gate, I had 7 business ideas. I did something called Brawn for Brains, where we were going to use people to do fundraising events that were doing like marathons and things like this. So it was called Brawn for Brains. I really loved the name for that one. It was a stinker. I didn't make any money and I lost money on that one. But the big one, the really big one that had me say, wow, I got some guts, is I put on an event called Lemon, Zest, and Garlic Fest. Sounds really yummy, right? Lemon, Zest, and Garlic Fest. Well, it was in San Diego in July. And as you mentioned, the weather, San Diego, we don't have bad weather. Well, in July, it's usually hot. It's like 100 degrees. Well, that day, the heavens decided to open and plummet us with 3 inches of rain solid in an hour. For us, that's a deluge of rain. And people their tents started collapsing, and it was just a nightmare. It wasn't really a nightmare, but for me, it was a nightmare. And I ended up losing $70,000 from that event. But at the end of the day, I said, you know what? What I'm going to do next time is, I didn't quit and give up. I ended up doing another event where I ended up having 3,500 people in attendance for my next event. And the thing is that we can quit and go home, pack up our bags, or we can say, what did I do wrong? Like you were mentioning about podcasts. What did I do wrong that I could have done better? And what did I do really great that I can do even better than that before? So that one was a test really, to see how much guts do I really have? How much fortitude do I have? Will I really keep going? Am I going to go home and put my tail between my legs and go back to work? Or what am I going to do? And I got tested big time. Wow.
It's remarkable that you had 3,500 people in attendance. I've hosted a few conferences, but never to that capacity, 500-600 people, but never 3,500 people. I can't hardly imagine putting on an event that size. It must take a big team.
Well, I wanted 1,500. So when we got to about a week before the event, we went from 1,500 to 3,500 in a week. It was crazy. People were seeing us all over the place. It did take a team. I had a team of volunteers that helped me to put it on, and we just did a phenomenal job. It was a cohesive team. I think there were about 10 of us total. And so if you think about it, 10 is not that many, but we ended up having at the event, we had 180 volunteers that showed up. So it was phenomenal. I had never done anything like that before. I haven't since, but it's okay because I decided to put that on the back burner for right now.
That's so interesting. A lot of my questions that I can think of aren't specific about podcasting, but I do want to talk about your journey with women action takers. And I know that you have like a networking group and a couple other things. Would you mind just, before we dive too deeply into the podcast, just sharing exactly where you are today, what businesses and avenues that you're managing today?
It's interesting because during my journey, those events that I mentioned earlier, those were like food festivals, something I'd never done before in my life. Just thought it would be fun to do that. And so I started doing those and they were a lot of fun, but I didn't make very much money. I didn't have sponsors. That's where I went wrong on there. I know that that's like my biggest paw, I guess. But what happened was, as I started doing these events and doing my networking events, I started to figure out like, wow, what's the commonality of all the different things that I do? And that's that I love bringing people together. I love creating community, building community. I love helping people, women in particular, because it's women action takers, helping them to share their voice with the world. And the reason for that is because I grew up in a very volatile, abusive, alcoholic household. At 5 years old, I ran away and I was gone an entire week. Okay, I only went to the neighbor's house, but I was gone an entire week. And when I came home riddled with fear because my dad was very abusive. And I carried that fear around with me until 2015. And then, so when I started on this journey of trying to figure out what I'm doing, what my purpose is, how do I fit onto this planet to make a difference? I just discovered that I love helping people to share their voice. So I have, Women Action Takers Publishing. I publish books. Right now we're working on a lot of collaboration books. And again, it's about sharing people's voice with the world. My networking events, I do speakers open mics at those networking events. I bring in speakers to speak, again, helping them to share their voice with the world. And so everything I do is around that. And so when the idea of the podcast came up, it was just like, I got to do this because I love interviewing people. I've interviewed hundreds of people. I've interviewed stars on the red carpet. I interviewed the president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, in his presidential suite. Like that was like my Oprah Winfrey moment. And it's been just an amazing journey and helping people to share their voice while I also get an opportunity to share my voice and show myself that, no, Lynda, you are not stupid and ignorant like you were told you were when you were a kid.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. You started a publishing company, you started a networking offshoot of the company to kind of bring people together and allowing also people to share their message on stage and kind of get their voice out. When was it that because I know your podcast launched about a weekish before we record this episode, but I'm curious how long it took from the day that you said you were introduced to a podcast to the day that you published. And if we could talk a little bit about that journey, whether it was a day, a month, or even a couple of years, what you did right and what you might do differently next time.
Yeah, this is interesting because what's the title? Women Action Takers. Action doesn't always mean you're taking action in that moment, like you have to jump into things. So one thing I've done is I have jumped without a net so many times that I know what that's like, and I'm not scared. I'm not scared to do that and fail. I have failed so many times, and that's where I've always learned something amazing. And the Women Action Takers podcast, the whole idea came up. I was attending an event where I was one of the speakers, and we were told there were going to be like 200 or 300 people in attendance. There ended up being about 40, and more than half of the 40 were speakers, of which I was one. So it was a 2-day event. The first day I was like, okay, well, this is I'm getting to meet these people. This is awesome. And then the next day, as we were driving to the event, I said, I'm going to start my podcast today. Like, just like that. I have 20 something women here. I'm just going to interview them all so I can have these interviews in the hopper. Right. And then I started realizing that, again, I did what I love to do, and that's to just jump into something. But I didn't know what I was doing. I know how to interview, but I don't know how to do a podcast. And then I had people say, oh, just start one, just push it out there. And I said, you know what? I have pushed out so many things. I want to do this one right. This one, I want to do with education. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to make sure I do everything right this time because I've done a lot of jumping in. And it took about almost 2 years before I finally launched it. The problem there is my favorite part is interviewing. So I have about 80 episodes in the hopper. What is that all about? I don't know. And it wasn't fear. That's the thing, is I think a lot of times people don't do things because they're scared. I just wanted to do it right this time.
I resonate with that a lot myself. I think with my experience in talking to a lot of podcasters, I would have to say I don't have an actual statistic for this. It just feels like, with my experience, that somewhere close to 95 or even higher % of podcasters, they don't go in with a plan. They go ready, fire, aim instead of ready, aim, fire. And what ends up happening specifically with a podcast, if you do it wrong, if you start and launch it wrong, unfortunately, you usually don't get any traction at all. But if you just put that little bit of extra effort to make sure it's done right and launched right, in general, those podcasts get massive traction on Apple and Stitcher and iHeart and all those things. So I'm glad you mentioned all about that. One thing that I may have missed, and maybe the listener caught it, could you remind me, from the day that you decided you wanted to do it, from the day that it was launched, about how long that took?
About 2 years.
Okay. 2 years. 2 years. Another thing that you mentioned that I wanted to kind of piggyback on is when you went to that conference that you decided, after 310 of them didn't show and only 40 did, 20 speakers, you decided, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take action and I'm going to interview these women. What I think happened to you at that event by being the person who interviews everybody, it allowed you to really network with everybody. You know how people are like, oh, I've got to give my business card out. And some people go as far as like stacking their business cards all over the windows on every single table. They fan out 3 of their business cards. Well, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to network. And with you inviting them to share their story on your show, that allows them twofold. A, it allows them to feel really good and get their story out and remember you. And B, it allows you to have a conversation where you can ask them anything outside of the event so that they definitely have to spend that time. And they might even share the podcast. Third reason, maybe at the end of the podcast interview, they're like, oh yeah, I remember when Lynda interviewed me at that conference. Yeah, I'd love to share that. So in a way, you're hacking into networks of women that you almost never could have done. And I spoke at some family office conference. I do real estate investing on the side, but I spoke at some family office conference and I was talking to billionaires, kind of like the people that you're talking about. And I remember one thing, and this I hope can resonate with our listener. I remember one thing in particular. One guy went up to talk to a billionaire and said, hey, can I have your card? And the guy goes, oh, I don't have any cards. I don't keep cards. And the next person goes up to that same person. Oh, I'd love to connect with you. And he goes, oh, give me your card. Maybe I'll connect with you because I don't have any cards. And then I went to the guy and I just said to this billionaire, hey, I loved this thing that you said on stage. I'd love to bring that story to my listener about XYZ. If you would consider coming on the podcast, I'd love to share your story. And the guy goes, oh, I'd love to. And he just pulls out a card without thinking about like the 2 people that he told that he didn't have one. He goes, I'd love to. Here, give me a call. That's my personal cell phone. And I'm like, whoa, that podcast makes a huge difference with the amount of networking that you can do. So you mentioned it took about 2-ish years. You started doing interviews right away. You have 80, you said, in the hopper. A lot of other podcasters might say in the can or in the bag, but I love the hopper because I used to do a lot of drywall and we had the same thing. It was a hopper. You put it all in the top and it just comes out. It helps you kind of get it ready to go. When you launched your podcast, because you had 80 plus episodes already ready, Lynda, did you launch with some kind of, oh, I'm going to put this many on day one and this many a week? Or is it just like once a week? How are you launching it? What did you do with all those podcast episodes that you had in the hopper?
Yeah, I didn't realize that was in the can, so maybe I'll change my language, but I like hopper. Okay.
I like hopper too.
It reminds me of a bunny hopping around. See, I'm multiplying, right? Multiplying those podcast episodes.
Bunnies do that.
What I did is I heard that you should launch 5 at the beginning. So I ended up launching 6. And then my goal, because again, it's just launched a week before we had this interview. My goal is to put 2 episodes out a week. And so Sunday's episode will be the interview that I did of somebody. And then Wednesday's episode will be me doing kind of like not a recap of the interview, but my perspective of that topic that we talked about. Because everybody I've interviewed so far has had kind of like a specific topic that it's been, and I have my own take on it, and I don't want to take from them during the interview. So I'm going to go ahead and do this is my perspective of this topic. And it's been fun because I have this opportunity to share my perspective, like all by myself. The first one I did of that, I was like, how the heck am I going to talk for 15 minutes by myself? And there was no problem at all. I have no problem talking. So it was awesome.
So with 80 plus episodes ready to go, already recorded, and additionally, your current plan of taking your perspective on each episode, you're somewhere around a year and a half or more of ready to go content. I'm curious if that means that you're going to stop recording with other people now so you can kind of get these out of the hopper, or just basically what's your plan on how that's going to work out?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because here's my challenge on that. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do there, because my favorite part is the interviewing. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, and I love that aspect of it. So eventually I'll decide what I'm going to do with that. Since it's so new, I'm not really sure. I have this idea that it's going to be 2 a week, but I don't know. Maybe I'll do a blast where I put out 50 episodes or something. I don't know, because I do need to get caught up. I know that. And really, I probably should stop interviewing people, but I can't help myself. I just can't help myself. So why would I deprive myself of the thing that I absolutely love doing, is the interviews. But I want to share something really quickly, because you mentioned the networking aspect of it, right? So that day, like you said, I interviewed about 24 women. I got 24 people who were interested in talking to me because I was giving them something. I do a give to give, not a give to get. And so that's all I did. I just wanted to interview them and give them. And it was about 2 years before that, though. Here's what was really indicative about exactly what you just said. I was at an event, and I had my business coach. He was there, and like all of us that were under him were there. And he said, here's your task for the day. I want you each to go out and get 5 business cards. I want you to connect with 5 people. And one of my fears is approaching people and having a conversation. And so networking events, I don't like them. I usually like to go sit in the corner and ignore everybody and be on my phone. I'm one of those, right? So I said, okay, here's the challenge, 5 people. How am I going to talk to 5 people? So what I did is I broke out my selfie stick. I put my camera on it, and I walked around. I said, hey, I'm interviewing people, just asking them about their business and what they do. And I ended up interviewing 38 people that day, and I got 38 business cards. But it was because I was giving.
Yeah.
So your point on that is so well taken.
That's so good. I'm glad you took the time to mention that. So with your podcast, you might be launching more, you might be launching less. I thought of something that I did one time when I was having that conference. You know how you have so many in the hopper? You know how you have so many ready to go? One thing that is absolutely possible is if you ever have like a sponsor, or if you ever want to self-sponsor and maybe host a conference or something. What I did once is, even though I was publishing like 2 a week, I had a lot in the hopper as well. So I ended up doing like 30 something in 30 something days, just one a day for a little over a month. And it allowed the podcast to grow so big when I did the dailies. And so I want to mention that to you, Lynda, just in case like you ever have a chance to do that, or to promote something, or to say to a sponsor, hey, look, I can get you on 30 different episodes in the next 30 days. Is that worth something to you? You know what I mean? And for me, what ended up happening is we just mentioned, hey, come to this conference that we're doing. It's coming up on this one date. And we mentioned that on every single episode. And we ended up having, well, not as remarkable as what you had, 3,500, 2,000 more than you wanted, geez. But we ended up having some success with it, whereas we didn't have hardly anybody registered until we did this. And it grew the podcast listener base. I don't know why, but the podcast itself got more downloads per episode. Strangest thing, right? It wasn't diluted. It was like they just came in flocks fast when we started upping the amount of content. And so we ended up selling out a little over 150 seats more than we even thought we had room for. So we had to put 600 people into a 450 room. So anyway, that might support you in what you're doing with all this extra stuff that you have, hopper that you have ready to go. And additionally, maybe if you host a conference or something like that. I want to find out from you, like, what you would have done differently, though. In your experience from launching a podcast, would you have taken 2 years still? Is there something that you look back on, you're like, man, why did I do that way? Or did you just do everything perfectly?
Oh, I did not do everything perfectly, that's for sure. But first, I want to say that is brilliant idea. I love that, doing 30 days, having somebody sponsor, because I do have Women Action Taker summits that I have one coming up, and I can do that leading up to that. So even if it's just 15 days in a row leading up to the summit, right? I can do that because then we'll do the buzz about the summit. I love that idea. Thank you so much. I wrote that down. I will definitely be doing that. What would I have done differently? Well, first of all, I think what I would have done differently is after I interviewed all those women, is I would have come back and I would have found out, how do I launch the podcast, and then actually launch it, but still doing the research to make sure I know what I'm doing. How often do they need to go out there? Because I know that there's the algorithms and all these different things that we need to learn, so many different aspects to launching a podcast that I didn't know at that time. And then I would have gone through a whole process and then created that process, because I have 2 virtual assistants who do work for me on the podcast and stuff. And I would have gone through the process from start to finish, created a process so that I could just give it over to them instead of me agonizing over it for 2 years, wondering, how do I do this? What do I need to do? And having because it's in the back of my mind the whole 2 years that I interviewed those women so long ago. And God, I'm doing them a disservice because I'm not putting their episodes out there. And then I've heard that there are a lot of people who have this grand idea of starting a podcast. They launch it, and then like 2 or 3 months later, they stop it. And I didn't want to be that person. But still, I've had in the back of my mind this disservice that I was doing to those women that I interviewed so long ago. So I definitely would have gone through the whole process, noted every single step, and then handed over to my VAs. That's what I would have done.
I am grateful that you are spending some time with us on the podcast today.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed, and we're not ending the conversation quite yet. I just appreciate who you are and how you are, and I feel inspired by you, and I appreciate you, and I'm glad that you're a part of the podcast. One of the things you said, Lynda, was just, you were like, oh, my 2 VAs, and you just gloss over it like everybody just has VAs. I work with virtual assistants as well. All of mine are in the Philippines. Well, except for one who's in Mexico and one who's in LA, but about 20 of them are in the Philippines. So a big majority. And I think I gloss over it as well. Over the last couple of years, I've been working with virtual assistants. And I noticed that with virtual assistants, a lot of people, in my opinion, for my experience anyway, a lot of people have some misconceptions or fear around working with a virtual assistant. And it even goes as far as people thinking, oh, I don't want a virtual assistant. I want someone who I can trust. And that's not my words. That's absolutely not my words. I may have actually felt that way, like, oh, wouldn't it be better if I just had somebody in my office? But I've learned a lot over the years working with virtual assistants. And if the listener's curious about VAs, you can go to a book. I think it's called The 4-Hour Workweek. So you can check that out. And basically, the whole thing is about how to leverage other people and for a price that you can afford. And even still, I think there's a lot that holds us back. So Lynda, if you don't mind, share with us who taught you about virtual assistants, how scared you were, and what they do for your business. A 3-part question. Who taught you? How scared were you to get started? And what do they do for your business?
Who taught me? I actually was a virtual assistant myself. And this was back in the late 1990s. And back then, there was no such thing as a virtual assistant. So I was a legal secretary at the time, and there was a layoff at the law firm that I worked at. And one of the attorneys that got laid off, she said, hey, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm not going to work for a firm anymore. Will you do some side work for me? So that's how I got started to becoming a virtual assistant. And that's how I learned about it. Then time went by, like internet was really a new thing kind of back then. And then I found out that there were these people called virtual assistants out there. And I was going to start, networking with them to see if there was a way we could collaborate with each other. And it was interesting because one thing I learned by being a virtual assistant is that it's really important for us as the consumer who's looking for that virtual assistant I mentioned earlier, I said, if I had done something differently, I would have gone through the whole process. I would have logged everything, every single step, and then I would hand that to my virtual assistant. A lot of people believe that in their business, they can, oh, I'm going to hire a virtual assistant and they're going to do everything for me. The thing is, you are going to set them up for failure, and then you're going to feel like they were a failure because you didn't have the systems in place for them to know exactly what to do. What I do with them is I go through the process and I write it down for myself. So I have like the steps, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, step 80, some of them are like 80 steps. And then I create a video and I walk them through. I do a screen share and
Is it Loom or something else?
I use Zoom. I just use Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use Zoom and I do a screen share. I say, do this, do that, do this, do that. And then I give them the video and then they walk through the steps. And what's great about that is because I'm walking through every single step for them, they get to see exactly the steps that they need to take. And they can visually see it because I'm doing that screen share on Zoom for them. Yeah. And I think a lot of people just set their virtual assistants up for failure and they don't know it. People don't realize that is because not every virtual assistant knows how to do everything. Me as a legal virtual assistant, since I was a legal secretary, I knew how to do it. They could just say, here, do this. But that's a specialist. That's not a virtual assistant. That's like a generalist. There's what's known as a generalist virtual assistant who will do like from phone calls to just doing general types of things. And then your specialist. Now your specialists are going to cost you more. So it depends on what you're looking for and what you want to do with your virtual assistant and how successful do you want them to be. These are things you got to answer to yourself before you go forward with one. I'm very passionate about virtual assistants.
I love that. That's so good. So you mentioned who taught you. It was kind of, in a way, it was yourself because you like fell into it and happened to be one and then started learning a little bit more. I missed what you were afraid of. Was there something that made it feel like, oh, I don't know if I want to take that step, or were you just all in?
There was definitely that. I'm not sure if I want to take that step. And like a lot of people, you mentioned trust, right? And a lot of times we feel like, here's what I felt like, is that, gosh, what if they don't do it as good as me? Then I heard this gentleman that people have heard of this company called UGG Boots. Brian Smith, he's the founder of UGG Boots. And he said, if somebody could do something 75 or 80% as good as you, is that good enough? It got me really thinking that, oh my God, I have been holding people to a standard that maybe they're not able to do, but also, what if you hire them and like my VAs, they're way better at it than I am.
Me too.
Oh my gosh.
I have to admit.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So the fear was the fear of trusting that somebody will do the job, that they will communicate. To me, communication is the number one thing. If you're going to go on vacation, please just tell me. If you're not going to be able to meet the deadline, please just tell me. I just want to be communicated with. So I had these fears that those things weren't going to happen. And when I made the decision to do it, I did hire a company that is in the Philippines, and they matched me up with somebody. So I didn't have to go search for this virtual assistant. They found somebody that was a fit for me. And oh my gosh, it was the biggest blessing and for many ways, not because of her coming in and working with me, but for me getting rid of my mindset to say that I can't trust somebody. That was the biggest release for me.
I love it. Man, I have so much that we need to cover with you. And let me just mention a couple things for our listener right now. I mentioned Loom being a screen recording software. It's very simple to use. Lynda mentioned Zoom as what she actually does use when she does her screen recording to record the tasks before she gives it off to her team. And we also mentioned a book called 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferris, I think. I might be saying it wrong. But these three links are already in the show notes underneath the resources tab. So if you just scroll down, click under resources, you can go and check out Loom, Zoom, or 4-Hour Workweek. And in some cases, what's in our resources are affiliate links, and in some cases they're not. But we always try to do affiliate links. Just to make you aware, I might make $1 if you buy that book, or 5 cents, or whatever it is. I don't know, but just so you know, those resources are already there, ready for you, links to them so you can learn about them and all that. Man, Lynda, one thing that you mentioned, if you're not going to XYZ, please just tell me. And I think it's important to share with our listener if they are going to get a virtual assistant. That's a thing that happens. That's one of the big drawbacks in a way to having a virtual assistant, is that their natural tendency normally is, I can do it, I can take it, and they might not always communicate that with you. It drives me crazy as well. But as part of the culture in the Philippines, oftentimes they feel shameful to say, I can't, or this is too much, or I'm overloaded, or I can't get to it until next Friday. They want to say, oh, I'll get that done today. And they forget to tell you that it's not going to be done. And so I think setting that groundwork or that framework out in the beginning when working with a virtual assistant can be super helpful. Lynda, you've obviously set that groundwork and let them know, hey, just tell me, it's okay. And allowed them to feel a lot better about, okay, yes, I am a little too overwhelmed. That's a lot to do before Friday. And so I think that's a big thing that you mentioned. What tasks specifically do you hand over to that virtual assistant?
It's interesting because when I started with my first virtual assistant, it was doing tasks like sending emails to people, or I do events, my Women Action Takers networking events. So reach out to people and invite them. That's what it started off as. And then one day I said, hey, can you create just a really short video clip for me? Something, it was maybe like a 30-second thing that I wanted her to do. And I sent it to her just to see what it would come out like. And I was amazed, absolutely just like blown away that she could do that and what she did with it. So I started kind of like having her do more video type of work. And it's been amazing because she has an eye that I don't have. And she creates, with my books, I create video commercials. Well, she creates video commercials, but we create video commercials together. And I just almost cry every single time I see one of the videos she's created from the people's chapters, because they're so moving what she's done. And so I mentioned that because oftentimes we don't know what skills they have, because we go into this relationship knowing or thinking we know what we need. But then as the relationship grows and fosters and we get to trust them more and test them out on different things, you might just be using them completely differently than you started. And it's been awesome. And then the other VA that I have, he also does a lot of video work for me. I have all these podcast episodes that I want them to be like other people's, where they have the videos and they have the teasers and all this stuff. And so I have them doing all of that work for me. And I'm just so extremely ecstatic with their work.
It's remarkable. Just, you're right. The skill, that level that a lot of virtual assistants have, the capability to be able to do different tasks, and they're more efficient than me. Absolutely. I think you and I probably have a couple things in common, where I have 10 ideas and we need to narrow it down to one or two to really just crush it. Yeah, it's funny. Well, out of curiosity, you mentioned all those cool things that your assistants are helping you with. For example, editing videos, publishing, creating audiograms, teasers, and emails and other things. About how much is this investment for your company? Like, are you paying them $40,000 a year, $10,000 a year? What does it cost, or what's the investment in your experience to work with a qualified virtual assistant that can really help your business?
My two VAs are part-time with me. So I'm spending about $650 a month, $550 or $650 a month, depending. And I give them tips too, because I know I'm not paying very much money. And when they do an amazing job and they're like right spot on, like I'll just send them some extra money because I really appreciate what they're doing. And one thing about that is showing them appreciation financially, but I also appreciate them constantly. Great job. Because as you mentioned, in the Philippines, the culture, a lot of times they want to please and they don't know how well they're doing until you tell them. So I praise them on a regular basis. And it's just amazing the work we do together.
That resonates with me so much right now. It's actually in a way making me feel bad, because I'm like, man, the team grew. And so we have just so many. And every now and again, it's only every now and again, I'll mention to one of them, this thing that you did was so good. And every time they will say, that means so much to me. Every time they'll say, oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so glad that you like it. And I don't know why, but I'm just too dense to think on my own, like I should show more appreciation more often. But I've been neglecting it, and hearing you say that makes me be a better boss, allows me to schedule in how can I show each and every member of my team that they're doing a great job for me, for the company, financially helping and supporting us to grow, that they're worth more than to the company than they're paid. I love that. Thank you. And I've learned so much from you already in so many ways.
Thank you. I want to mention that really quickly because the 5 love languages, if you've heard of that or if you haven't, take the test, the 5lovelanguages.com. Here's one thing I learned is words of affirmation. For some people, just those words of affirmation will carry them for days and days and days, because them knowing that you appreciate the work they're doing and you appreciate them, that means more to them than any amount of money, than any amount of gifts that you could give them. They just need that praise to know that, I am doing a good job. I'm going to keep going. I really love this person. I love working for this person, and I will work with them to the death because they're amazing and they appreciate me, because a lot of us don't get that appreciation from our family and friends. And so we do have to get it from outside sources. So as a person who has people working under them, if you could give those words of affirmation on a regular basis, it might seem too much to you, but to them, it's never too much. You can never give too much appreciation.
I want to put that into the resources, and I'm typing it in. I must be spelling languages wrong because I'm dyslexic, or I don't know if it's the number 5 or spelled out. So can you give me that link? Okay. Got it. 5, the number 5, lovelanguages.com. And I'm going to put that in just to double check. And I need that. I need that so much, just with me and my sweetheart. I want her to take it and me to take it just to grow that relationship and go to another level. So I'm glad you mentioned it. And now I've got the link correctly in my notes. And that will be part. Go ahead.
My husband and I have been together for decades. And we ended up taking the 5 love languages test. I did it myself and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I wonder if he'll take it with me. And he took it too. And oh my gosh, I got to find out what his needs are so that when I'm trying to say something or do something, I'm like, oh, that doesn't meet his need. And that's why he's not listening. So it can really help relationships, but not only like love relationships, but all relationships. I now listen to people when I'm talking to them. I hear what they're saying in terms of the love languages, so that I can deliver back to them what they need in order to understand that I do appreciate them, because not everybody needs those words of affirmation. Some do need gifts and money to feel appreciated. And so if we can speak to them where they are, then it's just, the world would be such a better place.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, what is the last parting advice that you want to pour into our listener who's a brand new podcaster, only been doing it less than 2 years or even about to launch? What big idea do you want to pour into them right here at the end of the podcast interview?
Fear is something that stops us from doing so many things in life. I do know this by facing a fear every day for a year. And so if you know what you're fearful of, check in and see, like, what am I scared of? Whether it's scared of putting your voice out there, or scared of looking for sponsors, or scared of asking people to listen to your podcast episode. There's so many different fears when it comes to sharing ourselves out there. And one thing I realized during that year that I was facing a fear is that when we have faith, our fear is weakened. So I came up with a different acronym, and I think you're going to love this one, Adam. And that is that faith erases anxious reactions. Faith erases anxious reactions. When I start to have fearful moments, because even though I faced a fear every single day for a year, I still have fear because I'm human. When I have fearful moments, I check in with myself and I say, Lynda, how strong is your faith right now? My faith is weak because my fear is strong. So I just tap into my faith and I just go for it.
Love it. Thank you for ending on that great note. Lynda Sunshine West from Women Action Takers, the podcast, the conferences or summits, the networking events, launching your book and growing that and having a cool video done with her virtual assistant and everything. thank you for jumping on the podcast and telling us about the 5 love languages, how it can work in our business, going into lots of detail on how you pay your virtual assistants, how much you pay them. $600 for 2 people is amazing. Talking about Loom and Zoom and 4-hour work week and having 80 episodes in the hopper and what you can do with those, and brawn for brains, and talking about facing a fear every single day, getting out of your comfort zone. There's a lot of amazing takeaways from this episode, and I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. And if the listener could take just a couple of minutes to jump over to your podcast, again, that is Women Action Takers podcast. Jump on over, especially if you're a woman. That would be awesome too, because everybody needs to take action and everybody will learn, but I know it's specific to women. But just jump over there, listen to an episode or 2, and leave an honest written rating and review. We'll leave with that. Lynda Sunshine West, thank you for jumping in. And I'll mention to the listener, make sure you jump out, reach out, start your podcast, and do it like Lynda said. You don't have to publish it the first day. You want to start taking action. She was taking action for 2 years by learning about it, making sure that it was planned and prepped, by recording plenty of episodes and having them all in the hopper. If you're ready to kind of start your podcast and grow your podcast and you need help, go to growyourshow.com. Just schedule a call with me. I'm your host, Adam A. Adams, and that's a wrap. This episode is brought to you by growyourshow.com. Grow Your Show lets you be the star of your show while we handle all the hard stuff. We offer reliable and affordable post-production services that allow you to grow your show organically without all the work. So go ahead and check out the website right now, and feel free to schedule a call with me, and let's take your show to the next level. Again, growyourshow.com. You just press record. We handle the rest.